Hi, I'm Emily Mallory of Emily's Papercrafts, and today I'm going to show you one of my all-time favorite quilling projects. Today we're going to create a little teeny tiny paper owl that will fit on a penny. Let's get started. To create the owl, you're going to need 2 pieces of quilling paper that are roughly 24 inches long. If they're a little bit less, it's okay. You can work with them just as easily. You'll also need a scrap piece of either a dark brown or black for the little legs / claws that we're going to create, and then another scrap piece of a coordinating color for your owl body that's between 1 and 2 inches long, and then 2 little wiggly eyes for our owl. So if this is your first time quilling, your quilling paper will come where it's all attached at both ends with some glue. You're just going to pop those off. We're going to need 2 strips. Just go ahead and pluck them off, and then you can set the rest of it aside. For the first strip, we're going to go ahead and roll that entire first piece. So you're going to put the tail inside of the slot of your quilling tool and just roll to the end. Try to keep my thumb out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. But we're just going to very gently and carefully roll the paper. It's okay if it moves around a little bit. The goal is to just not let it fall off the end, so sometimes I'll move my fingers to help make sure that it won't come off the end. If this is your first time quilling, you might have rolled this really tight, in which case you're just going to gently hold your paper and twist backwards just about like a quarter of a turn. If you're a little bit on the loose side, go ahead and hold your paper and then give it a little extra quarter turn towards the center. If you've done this before, then chances are your tension is perfect. Then we're going to take a little bit of a liquid glue. I'm using Elmer's today, and put some glue on the inside of that tail and then just smooth it down. It usually takes a couple of seconds for it to tack in place. So once it's tacked, gently pull off your tight circle from your quilling tool. And there's the top part of your owl body. Next, regardless of the length of your paper, you're going to want to remove 4 inches. So just go ahead and count off your 4 inches and then just tear it off. You now have scraps for a bunch of owls of a different coordinating color. Then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put that tail inside of the quilling slot and roll to the end. This will be creating that base for our little owl. We're creating another tight circle, so we're just going to roll to the end. Tight circle does not mean it needs to be super duper tight. It just means that there's no space between your coils. And then we're again going to put some glue on the inside of that tail and then just smooth it down and hold it in place while it tacks. And then gently remove it. And now you have the base of your owl and then your owl body. So taking the owl base in your fingers, you're very gently going to create sort of a bowl shape. You need it to be kind of a flat bowl shape, and it doesn't need to be a lot, just a little bit, so it can stand upright. And then we're going to put a bunch of glue. That's not even anywhere near enough, so I'm going to go back for some more glue. The whole bowl does not need to be heaping full or overflowing, it just needs to be well covered. Just kind of use the tip of your corsage pin, smear it around. Nope, now I've got a lot. Okay. Alright, well, that will be fine. We'll set it aside and let it dry. Next, we're going to take the owl body, and you can either use a dry corsage pin or just your fingers, and we're just going to gently shape it. Sometimes I find that the tail end or the back end of my quilling tool works really well. The goal is to not make these coils of paper come undone. If you're not liking the way one side is looking, as you're shaping it, try the other side. But we're just going to create a really long, but not a pointed, sort of ice cream cone shape. Sometimes even just using my fingers. Sometimes the first time or two is just a matter of getting the paper all loosened up so it'll do what I want it to do. This side is just not working, so I'm going to push it back, go flat again, and then I'm going to push out the other side. See if I can't get a better shape. One that's willing to work with me just a little bit more. There we go. Let's see if I can't pull down some of the ones here around that last loop. This little owl is going to go into my upcoming Quilled Animals book. So if you're enjoying this one, come back and see me again here in a few months as I work on getting my book put together. It'll be filled with 50 different animals, one for each letter of the alphabet. So again, we're going to fill this, not necessarily literally fill it, but we're going to coat the inside of it with glue. Make sure you get way down there to the center, because if someone were to pick up your owl later on and it's not completely glued, it's going to collapse, which would be very, very sad after all of this hard work. Forgot to mention, if your paper as you're shaping it does come undone, it's not the end of the world. You just get to start all over again with that piece of paper. So you can either decide to use that piece of paper or to start with a new piece of paper. We're going to set those two aside to dry for a few minutes. So we're going to take our dark brown or our black, depending on what color scrap you've got, and we're going to create some claws. So I'm going to create a nice smooth edge. Take some little scissors and I'm just going to cut in about 1/8 of an inch, or the width of the paper really. I'm just going to make 2 little slits. So now I have 3 little claws. And then I'm going to cut about 1/8 of an inch below that, those 2 little snips. We're going to create a second one. So 1, 2, and then we're going to cut it off. And then that's my scrap there. Then taking the part that's not cut in my left hand and my quilling tool in my right, I'm going to take each one of those. You can either roll them individually or all together, and we're just going to kind of curl them up a little bit so they will look like actual little claws when we glue them onto the owl body here in a few minutes. Do the same thing with that second set. Plus, once we curl it, it's going to be a lot easier to pick up. So just curling them over just a little bit. Alright, I still see lots of glue, so we're going to let that sit for another minute. We're going to take our coordinating color and cut it in half long ways to create 2 narrow strips of paper. It's okay if you're not completely even with your cutting. That's sometimes the challenge of using littler scissors versus bigger scissors. Then we're going to take each one of these and fold them roughly in half. Sometimes it's easier if they're not exactly in half. I'm going to open it up a little bit because then we're going to put some glue in there. I'm going to fold the other one in half. So then we're going to take just a little bit of glue. A little bit's going to go a long way. We're going to glue right down here to the fold. So a little bit on each side of that fold. If you realize you got too much, take a dry part of your corsage pin and just sort of smear it or clean it up a little bit. And we're going to put our 2 folds together and glue them together. It's okay if they don't go all the way down there. Mine are not wanting to cooperate and meet up precisely there at those folds. No big deal. Because in a minute we're actually going to glue it shut, so no one's going to know about it anyway. So we're going to put a little bit of glue here on the inside of those folds. It's sometimes easier with quilling to start with way too much and to be able to trim it than to start with not enough and wish you had added just 1/2 inch more. Plus it's always easier to pick up and move around too. So then I'm going to work on shaping the eyebrows for my owl. You can decide how long you want your little beak part to be. Sometimes I like it really long, other times I like it on the shorter side. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim. You can decide how long and distinctive, pronounced you want your little eyebrows to be, or how short if you want them in different lengths. So the bottom side could be longer and then the top one could be shorter. It's up to you. Okay, so we now have our little beak and eyebrows and our body, 2 little claws, and our eyeballs. Next, it's coming along nicely. You can either, depending on how well your glue is drying at this point, pause the video and come back in a few more minutes, or gently and very carefully put some glue right here on that inner side of the owl body, because we are now going to attach this bottom part to the inside of our owl body. So we're going to take this and invert it. So if you've got a lot of glue like I do, you might get, yep, a fingerful of glue. Then we're just going to insert a smaller piece right inside that longer cone. You don't need to shove it in, but the goal is to kind of let it balance in there. And then put it back on the table. Make sure it's standing up nicely. And it is fantastic. Next, I always try to hide where I glue it in the back. I am going to put a little bit of glue. There's two ways of doing this. It's probably going to be easier if I just, put that down. Put the glue on the eyebrow and the beak. So put a little bit of glue on the back side of just that folded, glued beak part, because the eyebrows are not going to really touch the owl body. And then place it on the front of your little owl. It's really easy to want to start fiddling. Just go ahead and put it on and let it start tacking. Next, we're going to put, while that's drying there, a little dab of glue on each side. And then while I'm here, attempt to fade a little bit. You can either do this as your next step or simultaneously. Those will be for our claws. So I'll put my little wiggly eyes on. The whole wiggly eye does not need to be covered in glue. It's just enough to help hold it there in place. Okay, make sure my eyes look like they're lining up nicely. Fantastic. Then with our claws, make sure you glue down the non-cut side so you have your little claws standing up and pointing out, because as you put them on, you'll gently, unintentionally, shape those little claws. Okay, there we go. It needs to dry a little bit more, but you have a very cute and adorable 3D owl that will stand up all on its own. Again, this owl will become part of a book that I'm putting out sometime in 2022, so stay tuned for some more videos on how to create some of the individual animals, and then look for the book later on in 2022. Thanks so much for joining me.